July 29th, 2019, Cleveland, Ohio. A man walks into a bank to rob it. He hands the teller a note that says, "This is a robbery." The teller flips the paper over. On the back is the robber's full name and home address. This actually happened, and this is that story. The man's name was Michael Harrell. He was 54 years old, and on that Monday morning, he decided he was going to rob a U.S. bank branch in Cleveland. Like most bank robbers, Harrell knew he needed a demand note. Something simple, something scary, something that would convince a teller to hand over cash without anyone doing anything heroic. So he went looking for paper. What he found was a document he'd recently used at the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles. Official, legitimate, and blank on one side. On the other side, though, was his full legal name and his current home address, printed neatly like the state of Ohio was trying to be helpful. To any functioning adult, this is where the plan dies. Because the whole point of a robbery is not attaching your contact information like you're dropping off a resume. But to Michael Harrell, this wasn't a problem. This was efficiency. This was recycling. He took a marker and wrote on the blank side, "This is a robbery. Don't get nobody hurt." Then he headed to the bank. He stood in line like a normal customer, waited his turn, walked up to the counter and slid the note to the teller. And from his perspective, this was going flawlessly. Now imagine being that teller. You're trained for this. Your heart rate spikes as soon as you read the words, "This is a robbery." You start moving toward the drawer, doing what you're supposed to do. And then you notice there's printing bleeding through the paper. So you flip it over. And there it is. His name, his address, in black and white. A confession with a bow on it. In that instant, this stops being a crime and becomes a punchline. The teller gathered the cash, $206, handed it over, and watched Michael Harrell walk out, already knowing exactly who he was and where he lived. Back at the bank, the investigation began. It lasted about 5 seconds. The teller called 911 and didn't need a description. She had more than a description. She had the kind of information the police usually have to beg for. Police didn't need a manhunt. They didn't need to enhance security footage. They didn't need tips from the public. They didn't need a profiler, a task force, or a whiteboard with red string. They needed Google Maps. A few days later, officers went to the address printed on the note and arrested Michael Harrell. The case was essentially solved the moment he committed the crime. And here's the thing that should terrify you. Michael Harrell wasn't even the dumbest criminal that month. He's just one shining example in an entire galaxy of people who defeated themselves before police even showed up. After reading enough cases like this, a pattern emerges. Spectacularly bad criminals almost always fail in one of 3 ways: bad planning, bad tools, or catastrophic getaways. And once you know that, you start seeing it everywhere. Bad planning is where most of these stories begin. Like the case of an 18-year-old named Ruben Zarate in Chicago. Back in 2008, Ruben walked into a muffler shop to rob it and demanded money. The employees told him the cash was locked in a safe that only the manager could open. Now, a smart criminal leaves. A less smart criminal panics. Ruben, on the other hand, treated this like a minor inconvenience. He gave the employees his phone number and told them to call him when the manager arrived. He didn't just attempt a robbery, he offered a callback service. Naturally, the first call the employees made was to the police. The second was to Ruben. And Ruben, bless his commitment to customer satisfaction, returned to the scene expecting a smooth transaction. Instead, he was greeted by officers. If Michael Harrell handed police his home address, Ruben Zarate handed them his availability. And if you think giving the victims your phone number is stupid, wait until you hear what happens when these people choose their tools. But quick question, what's the funniest fail so far? The bank robber who basically included a return address? Or the guy who left a phone number like he was ordering pizza? Drop a comment. I want to see which one is winning in the court of public humiliation. All right, tools. In theory, if you're going to rob someone, you bring something intimidating, something that gives you leverage, something that makes other people decide it's safer to cooperate than to argue. And that concept was apparently completely lost on a man named Derek Mosley, who decided he was going to rob a gun store armed with a baseball bat. Let me repeat that. A gun store. A building filled with guns, staffed by people who not only own guns, but are excited to show you them. Mosley walks in, brandishes a piece of wood, and threatens the staff. The manager responds by doing the most predictable thing in human history. He pulls out an actual gun and holds Mosley at gunpoint until police arrive. The robbery lasted about 10 seconds. It wasn't a crime. It was a short lesson in cause and effect. But at least a baseball bat is technically a weapon. Some criminals operate on an even more abstract level. In Scotland, a woman assaulted a bus driver with a half-eaten banana. The driver ended up covered in banana, and in court, the woman argued that it was unreasonable for a banana to cause that much damage. And somehow, the court agreed. She got a small fine. Which is wild, because if there's one thing we should be cracking down on, it's fruit-based violence. That's how society collapses. First, it's bananas. Next thing you know, someone's doing a drive-by with a cantaloupe. But even the banana story doesn't top the most beautiful example of bad tools, where the tool isn't the weapon, it's the money. One man successfully robbed an armored car and got away with 4 bags of loot. The problem was the bags contained $800 each, all in pennies. That's 80,000 pennies per bag. Each penny weighs 2.5 grams, which means each bag weighed over 400 pounds. His grand escape wasn't a sprint. It was a slow, miserable shuffle, like a man trying to carry 4 refrigerators while pretending nothing is wrong. He wasn't caught by brilliant police work. He was caught by gravity. And even if a criminal somehow botches the planning and brings the wrong tools, they still have one final chance to salvage the operation. The getaway. This is where mechanics, physics, and human stupidity collide in the most spectacular ways possible. In Omaha, Nebraska, a 17-year-old named Maganga carjacked a woman at gunpoint. He demanded the car. She handed over the keys. He jumped into the driver's seat, ready for his dramatic escape. Except the car had a manual transmission. Maganga didn't know how to drive stick. So instead of speeding off, he stalled the car repeatedly, lurching forward a few feet at a time like a haunted shopping cart. After a few painful minutes of fighting the clutch and losing, he abandoned the car and ran on foot. He was caught shortly after, defeated by a third pedal. In Washington state, 2 robbers snatched a woman's purse at a gas station and sped off, until they realized they didn't have enough fuel to escape. And here's where a normal person would improvise. Hide. Abandon the car. Do literally anything except the dumbest option possible. These 2 returned to the same gas station to use the stolen credit card. By the time they pulled back in, the victim was already there talking to police. They got arrested on the spot. Their entire escape plan was essentially, let's go back to the crime scene and see if it's still available. And now we reach the most karmic getaway fail of all time. A man tried to steal gasoline from a parked RV by siphoning it through a hose. He found what he thought was the gas cap, inserted the hose, and started sucking. He connected it to the septic tank. Not the gas tank. The septic tank. If you've never had the pleasure of thinking about RV plumbing, just know that this man attempted grand theft gasoline and instead drank sewage. The RV owner later found him vomiting uncontrollably on the ground and reportedly didn't even press charges because, honestly, what more do you want? The universe already handled it. I want to pause here for a second because the septic tank guy haunts me. Somewhere in his planning process, he thought, I'll steal gas from an RV, and not once did he consider what else comes out of RVs. That level of non-thinking is almost Zen-like in its purity. It's like his mind achieved emptiness and stayed there. Anyway, where was I? Right, Criminals who somehow make things even worse after the crime is already over. Because Michael Harrell handing over his name and address feels like a massive mistake, right? Like rock bottom? These next criminals didn't even wait to get caught. They called the police themselves. In Pennsylvania, a man bought marijuana, didn't like the quality, and called 911 to complain that it was nasty. Imagine committing a crime and then requesting customer support from law enforcement. In Ohio, another man called police because he got too high and panicked. Officers arrived to find him curled up on the floor surrounded by snacks like he was building a defensive fort out of Doritos and Chips Ahoy. When he handed over his keys, they found his stash. He voluntarily summoned the authorities to witness his personal crisis. And then there's the courtroom story, which is the perfect closer because it's not just stupid, it's cinematic. A man in Colorado was already in court facing drug charges. As he stood before the judge, he tried to discreetly dispose of something from his pocket. A small baggie fell to the floor. An officer noticed. Soon, everyone noticed. It was cocaine. In a courtroom. In front of the judge. The video shows him trying to cover it with his foot, which is the kind of move that only works if everyone else in the room is legally blind. The judge's response was basically the voice of every adult on earth. You can't have cocaine, it's illegal, and it's really bad when you drop it in court. And that brings us back to Michael Harrell, a man who thought he committed a successful bank robbery when, in reality, he filed his own arrest paperwork. His mistake wasn't forgetting to cover his tracks. It was never realizing he needed to in the first place. Because the greatest threat to a bad criminal isn't the police or the justice system. It's the mirror. So now I have to ask, who wins the award for the most spectacular fail? Michael Harrell and his self-identifying demand note? Ruben and his robbery callback service? The penny thief defeated by physics? The stick-shift carjacker? Or septic tank siphon guy, who I'm still not over? Let me know in the comments, and be specific. Don't just say a name. Tell me why their fail hits different. And if you enjoyed this tour through criminal incompetence, subscribe, because I've got a whole series of these. Next time, we're covering a guy who robbed a bank wearing his work uniform, with his name tag still on. Yeah, that happened.